kindergarten. On Monday, we had off school. And the reason we had off school was because Monday was a holiday called President's Day. And on President's Day, that's a day set aside where we honor and remember two of our country's presidents that lived and were president a long, long, long time ago. And those men are Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. Now, George Washington was our very first president in our entire country. He was president a very long time ago in the 1700s. And Abraham Lincoln was actually our 16th president. And he was president in the 1800s, still a long, long time ago. So today we're going to actually read and learn a little bit about George Washington. If you would like to learn and read a little bit more about George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, you can go to the Scholastic News and find out a little bit more about Abraham Lincoln. But today we're going to talk about George Washington. George Washington's birthday was on Monday, February 22nd. So I decided we don't really have time to do both today. So we're going to just talk about Mr. Washington, George Washington. So I'm going to share this story with you today. And then we're going to use the information that we learned from this story to create a foursquare about George Washington. So this book is simply called George Washington. It is non-fiction text because we are going to learn information or facts about George Washington in our story today. This is not a made-up story. This is a factual story, so that is why it is called nonfiction. And nonfiction books often have something called a table of contents, which we have right there. And that simply tells us where to find things in the book or what the different topics will be in our book. So our first section is called Who Was George Washington? George Washington was the first president of the United States. He was a farmer, a soldier, and a hero. He helped America become a free country. And this captions are also found in nonfiction books. This caption just tells the picture, what the picture is, and this is a portrait of George Washington. And George Washington lived so long ago that they didn't even have cameras. So in order for someone to have their picture taken or done, it had to be painted by an artist. So this is a painting of George Washington because there were no cameras back then. Can you imagine? All right, this page is called Growing Up. George was born on February 22nd, 1732, on a farm in Virginia to a large family. He spent much of his time with his older brother, Lawrence. Lawrence lived on a plantation called Mount Vernon. He was an army officer. George wanted to be just like him. And this is a picture of Mount Vernon, and it grew into a large plantation. It had 8,000 acres of land. And here it says that a plantation is a large farm that grows plants for food and clothing. Teaching himself. When George was 11, his father died. He had to stop going to school to help at home. But George read a lot and taught himself. When he was 17, he got a job measuring land and making maps. That sounds like a really fun job. George was brave and strong. He was very good at riding horses. This helped him become a great soldier a few years later. Becoming a leader. In the 1700s, America was not yet the United States of America. It began as just 13 colonies ruled by King George III in England. People came on ships to live in America. They wanted more freedom than the king would give them in England. So back in this time, friends, America was not even really a country. It was just a colony, a bunch of colonies owned by England. And people sailed from England over here across the ocean and came to America. This is called Mount Vernon. Sadly, when George was 20, his brother Lawrence died. Later, George became the owner of Mount Vernon. In 1759, George married Martha Custis. They were happy together at Mount Vernon. And this just tells us a fun fact. And here's our fun fact. George Washington did not have a middle name. The making of a hero. In the 1700s, there was trouble coming. King George III made the colonists pay extra money for tea and other supplies they needed. The colonists didn't think this was fair. They were angry. They wanted freedom from England. They asked George Washington to lead the American army against the British army. And this caption down here says that George Washington was a great leader. He was smart and brave. He strongly believed in American freedom. And then this is called War and Peace. The Revolutionary War started in 1775. The British thought they would win. They had more men and supplies. American soldiers didn't have enough food or warm clothes, but they would do almost anything for freedom. In 1776, America's leaders signed the Declaration of Independence. It said America had the right to be free and make its own rules. The British didn't agree. They sent more troops to fight. For 8 long years, the war went on. The British were tired of fighting a war far from home. The British were beginning to run out of supplies and money. Finally, they gave up. In 1783, America had won its freedom. So this was when our country was first formed. Very first president. How would this new country work? In 1787, men from each state came together to write new rules for the United States. They called these rules the Constitution. They had to choose a new leader. George Washington was elected the first president of the United States in 1789. It was a big job to unite the country. And unite down here says unite, to bring together. And then home again. After 8 years as president, George gave up his power. He was happy to go home to Mount Vernon again. He had many visitors, and he rode horses every day. In December 1799, George got sick with a bad sore throat. There was no medicine in his time to cure him. He was 67 years old when he died. So they didn't have medicine like you and I have today. In his honor, George Washington was greatly loved. He is the only president to have a state named after him. The state of Washington. It's way over here by California. Whoops, it's Washington. And our country's capital, Washington, D.C., which is actually not too far from where we are. You may have visited Washington, D.C. before. His face is on the dollar bill, the quarter, and a U.S. postage stamp. So friends, if you have a dollar bill in your piggy bank, this picture is George Washington. And the quarter, if you have a quarter in your piggy bank, on the front of the quarter, that face is George Washington. And then there's a famous mountain called Mount Rushmore in South Dakota, and his face is actually carved into the rock of the mountain. And then in Washington, D.C., there's a special tall monument that looks like this. And it's called the Washington Monument, and it stands 555 feet high, and it's the world's tallest stone structure, and it's made in honor of him. And last but not least, one more fun fact. Did you know that George Washington is the only president who did not live in the White House? Do you know why? Because the White House wasn't built yet. They built the White House after George Washington was president. So friends, I hope you enjoyed our story about George Washington. So now what I would like you to do, you can go ahead in a second and pause this video. I want you to get your journal and a pencil. You're going to use a pencil. I'm going to use a marker and your space stick. And we are going to do a quick little Foursquare about George Washington. So go ahead and gather your supplies. You need your journal, pencil, space stick. Oh, and also maybe something to color with, like a pack of crayons or markers or color pencils. Come right back here and we're going to do a quick Foursquare. Okay, friends, we are back. So go ahead and open your journal to the next empty page. We're going to use the white page here for our Foursquare. So if you need to pause the video while you do that, go ahead. All right, friends, you should have an empty page in your journal, and we're going to get ready and write. Now, remember, I'm going to use the markers because I want you to see it really well. You're going to use a pencil, okay? So, first thing first, friends, I want us to draw a pretty, long, a bigger rectangle than we typically do. Normally, our rectangle is maybe narrow and small. I want this rectangle to be a little bit bigger, okay, wider and longer, because I want us to write George Washington in that entire box. So give yourself a decent size middle box, okay? And then, of course, we're expert Foursquare drawers now. So draw a line down, draw a line up, a line over, and another line over. Okay? All right, friends. Now we're going to do a Foursquare about George Washington. We're going to just do 3 today because I know this is kind of getting a little long. So we're only going to do 3 squares. So in our middle square, not even square, rectangle, in our middle rectangle, we're going to write his name. His name is George Washington. Now I'm going to turn this slightly so that I can write without having to write upside down. And George, I'm going to help you by spelling it for you. George is spelled J. That sounds like a J, but friends, it's a G. So we're going to write G. Can you see that? Yes. G-E-O-R-G-E. George. Go ahead and pause the video and you copy capital G because that's the name of his name. E-O-R-G-E. Pause the video and press play when you have it all written down. Okay, friends, you have George written down. Now we're going to do his last name, Washington. That's a W, right? I'm going to write Washington down here. You might want to do the same thing. A, sh. We learned that. That's the digraph S-H. W-A-S-H. Ing. Some of my friends know the king of ing is I-N-G. W-A-S-H-I-N-G. T is a T. Un. O-N. Go ahead and pause the video and finish writing Washington. All right, friends. Do you have that all written down? Okay. The first thing we're going to write up here, now I want you to maybe get your crayons or markers ready. We're going to write that George Washington, let me straighten this up a little bit. He was our first president. We're going to write first president here. We're going to write that he is on the $1 bill. And then we're going to write that the Washington Monument was built in honor of him. So we're going to write and then we're going to go back and draw. Okay? So first president, I hear an F. I'm going to tell you is I-R. First. Very good. And then president, I'm actually going to go back into my book because we can use things like our book to help us know how to spell words. And I can know and look that president is right here. I can use that to help me copy president. So I'm going to do that. Now I know you don't have the book, so I'm going to tell you the letters. P, R, R, E is E, S, I'm going to run out of room, friends. Uh-oh. I ran out of room. It's okay if you accidentally run out of room. But president is President. Okay? Pause the video if you need more time. And then, friends, because he was the first president of our country, I think a good thing to draw for this picture when you have time later, or if you want to take the time now to do it, I think would be to draw our flag. So I'm going to just draw a rectangle and then draw another rectangle. And I'm not going to be able to fit 50 little stars or dots in here, but I'm just going to do the best I can right now. And actually when George Washington was president, there was only 13 stars because at the time there was only 13 states or colonies. So there's my flag. You can draw a flag too. And again, I'm kind of starting to move quickly because this video is getting long. You can always pause the video and come back and do this at your own time, okay? All right, friends, he is on the dollar bill. So for this, you know what? I'm going to let's just draw a dollar bill. So I'm going to take my green marker. You can take a green crayon or a green colored pencil. And then there's always like that circle in the middle. You can draw his face in the middle. And then it's the dollar. So then the dollar has a 1, a 1, a 1, and a 1 in every corner. And in here, you can draw a face, and that's George Washington. So that's how you can draw that he's on the $1 bill. Okay. And then our last, and again, I'm going kind of fast because I don't want this video to be too long. You go ahead and pause whenever you need to. We're going to draw and write that the Washington Monument was built in his honor. And this, friends, maybe you've been to Washington, D.C., but this is the Washington Monument. It's a long, narrow tower. And at the top, it has a pointy, like a pyramid shape at the top. It's not the best, but okay. And then we're going to write Washington Monument. We can get Washington from right here. Oh, you can't really see that. Hang on. There we go. All right. Move this around. Washington. And then I'm going to help you with monument, friends, okay? And this is the capital W because it's his name, and this is the capital M because it's the name of the monument. M-O-N, mon, U, that's a U, ment, M-E-N-T, M-E-N-T. And I know I'm going fast, friends. You can pause. Can you see that? Yes, you can pause at any time, okay? All right, friends, so when you are all finished, you should have 3 squares done. You're going to have that George Washington was our first president and that he is on the $1 bill. Bring this up here. He is on the $1 bill and that the Washington Monument was made in his honor, okay? So those are... My papers are falling here. These are the things that you should have in your journal today. I hope you enjoyed learning about George Washington today. And if you would like to learn more about George Washington or also learn more about Abraham Lincoln, there is a Scholastic News that you can read or do with a grown-up that'll give you a little more information on both of these amazing presidents. All right, friends, have a great day, and I will see you later.